Welcome into Training Camp Report presented by Ticketmaster. Our final day, and as you can see there, it is Creamsicle Day. It is actually National Creamsicle Day, which of course the Buccaneers had to take advantage of since we are bringing the creamsicles back. And what a better way to kick off our final one of these training camp reports than with this very special guest. I have Mayor Jane Castor with me. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, always a pleasure, Casey. This is such an exciting day, bringing Creamsicle back.
Yes, and you're rocking it wonderfully, by the way.
I don't know about that, but, you know, do what I can
It
for
looks great.
Creamsicle.
You know, you're the 59th mayor, so we got you the custom jersey, and you were able to help kick off practice today because you have it with you a very special proclamation.
Very, very excited to be here today. You know, born and raised here in Tampa. Wish I was still 59, but advanced a few years since then. But I remember when the Bucs, first came. Announcement 74, started playing 76 in the old sombrero, just so exciting in our creamsicle outfits with Bucco Bruce. And then in 1996, we went to the pewter and red, which, thank goodness, let's all admit, but we are rocking the creamsicle again. And I brought a proclamation announcing that not only is it Creamsicle Day in the Tampa Bay area, but it is Creamsicle Day across the nation. Of course, that's because of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but we are so excited to be starting our next season. The Bucs are what make Tampa Bay, and we are just so very excited. So we want everyone to join us in celebrating Creamsicle Day here in Tampa Bay. And not only are we having the practice, but we're having fireworks down at Armature Works. There are all kinds of festivities going on today, leading into another title-winning season for the Buccaneers.
I love it. That is so great. What a great proclamation. We love that the whole city is getting behind this. It's getting lit up orange a bunch of places. A lot of the Bucs sponsors are serving creamsicle flavored things. It's just so cool to have everybody in on this. We love the jerseys. I mean, they just look absolutely incredible. The reveal day, all the 70s stuff. We even have, you can see the new outfits that the cheerleaders are going to be wearing, throwing it back to the 70s. It's just going to be such a cool thing. And I feel like the fact that you guys were able to do this proclamation and make it a whole citywide thing is just such a sign again of what it's like when you get to be mayor of a city that has an NFL team. There's not that many of those around the country. And what have you seen in your time in office as to the impact of having the Buccaneers in this city and what it means to the city and what the city means to the Bucs?
Well, it's just been incredible. You know, our Super Bowl win during the pandemic, at home, the first team ever to win in a host city, and to be able to be on the world stage, which is where the Super Bowl puts you, and just have such a resounding win. We literally had businesses move to Tampa after that Super Bowl. So being able to show all the things that are wonderful about Tampa and the fact we get to live in paradise just pays dividends economically and socially for us. And we thank the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for that.
It's amazing. And we'll close with this. I know yesterday was Women of Red Day at practice. Yes. They honored the girls and flag football scholarship winners. I know you played sports, you love sports. What is it like to watch the way that the Bucs have engaged female fans and especially honored a lot of these girls in flag players and hosted tournaments here and just really are hyping up girls flag?
Yeah, it really is remarkable, and we have to give Darcy Glazer the recognition for that. She hosts the world's largest women's flag football, and to come out and see all of those young women out on the field participating while their families and young brothers are sitting on the sidelines cheering them is just something that, as a former athlete, warms my heart. So thanks to Darcy, thanks to the Glazers for really bringing the community into football.
What position do you think you would have played if you'd gotten to do flag football?
Well, I'd like to say now that I'm 63, without a doubt, the quarterback.
I mean, obviously. Of course. Well, Mayor, thank you so much for joining us, for all the support for Creamsicle Day and everything else that you do for this city. We just really appreciate it.
Always my pleasure, Casey.
All right, well, we'll be back with another segment here talking football. For right now, let's take a look back at that Creamsicle reveal video.
I say that we're here for one reason and one reason only.
It's hard to describe the feeling.
It's been a long time coming. The feeling, haven't had it for a long time.
What it all still means.
It's a spirit that not many cities have.
A pride that few really know.
What an excited group this is.
It's for all of Tampa Bay.
You play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you say, I don't want it to be us.
It's like a photograph,
Tampa Bay selected Derek Brooks.
a moment in time from years ago.
What a day.
The first thing I want to say is the buck stops here.
Except it's right now. This is what it looks like. The ones keeping this ship on course. United, the crew of Tampa Bay. This is our legacy, our tradition, and the next generation of Buccaneers.
Welcome to Leroy's, fellas.
It's a bridge between the past and the present for the flag bearers of this new era. And even though the names change,
Number 63 leading the charge, Leroy Selman.
the legends that came before us live on. We arrived here in different ways, but now we're here for the long haul. It's time to move our legacy forward. This moment belongs to us.
We're tearing down the goalposts here at Tampa Stadium.
There's decades of pride in these threads.
Tampa Bay defense not giving up at all.
The names on the back will change,
Oh, he did. Wide open.
but their DNA is sewn into the threads.
First victory ever for the Tampa Bay Bucks.
This is our legacy, made new. This is not a throwback. It's the core of who we are. It's for the OGs, the day ones, and the generations still to come. And to the ones who understand this feeling, it's simple. Whatever time or place you're from, you were born a Buccaneer.
Welcome back into Training Camp Report presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips, now joined by senior writer and editor Scott Smith. Our final day of these shows here at the Advent Health Training Center as we wrap it up with fans. And what a way to go out with Creamsicle Day.
Yeah, it's awesome. But why do I always have to follow all these tough acts?
I know you don't have a proclamation with you, do
I
you?
have no proclamations. I mean, I guess I'll be proclaiming a few things.
There
along
we'll
the
go.
way.
We'll proclaim these other things. How about the fact that we're going to talk about this upcoming game now? We've turned the page on this last preseason game. We're looking ahead to the fact the team does leave tomorrow for New Jersey, and they'll be playing the Jets this week in a preseason game. We know that coaches had talked about the fact that Baker was going to get the start last game. Kyle Trask will get the start this game. What are you going to be looking forward to, knowing that now we get to see it flip-flopped and what you feel like we need to be looking for?
Yeah, what I assume we're going to see is a similar structure to the first game, just with the two quarterbacks flipped in order. And the main thing that stood out about that to me is, even though a lot of the starters didn't play, who did play, the offensive line, the pass catchers, was pretty similar for both guys. They both played behind the same line. So I think we'll probably see the same thing again, just so you can have an equal measuring stick for the two of them. So, you know, if one guy plays with all ones and one guy plays with all twos, first guy does better. Is that because he had a better cast around him? It's hard to say. So if they get the same cast, hopefully we'll be able to judge them more closely. But this time, Kyle would go a little bit longer as a starter than Baker. So, you know, I'm sure he's looking forward to that opportunity for his first NFL start.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody has been just wondering, when do we get the decision, right? When do you think we hear who the quarterback is going to be? Now that after this game, theoretically, they would have each started one. Do you see this being when the decision gets made?
Well, I know you're right about everybody wondering about that, because I think Coach Bowles is asked some variation of that question every single day. And the last time he was asked, I thought that he left some wiggle room there, but didn't say no to the idea that they might name a starter after the second game, before the third game, and that might inform what they do with the quarterbacks in the third game. If you've chosen, say, Baker or Kyle as your starter, maybe that guy doesn't play in the third game, or maybe he plays a lot more because you want to get him ready for the regular season. He did say it wasn't certain that they would name a starter before that game, though. So we'll see next week. I'm kind of thinking it makes sense to do so, but we'll see.
And I know he was also asked about some of the things that the team is working on in these final days of camp, and one of the things was short yardage plays.
Yeah, and I can understand that. We saw in the game a couple of opportunities that didn't work out. They were pretty basic runs up the middle, and you stay basic in the preseason. If you have some plays that you think are going to work, you really don't want to put them on film very much. But they know that that's an issue, and I think that was an issue last year as well, just short yardage troubles, and they want to go into this season with like a suite of plays. I don't know, 5 or 6 of them that they feel really good about working on short yards, that they trust in that situation, and they know that they can't just be all runs up the middle because the other team loads up for that. And as we saw in the game, there was a 4th down carry by Keyshawn Vaughn that went nowhere, and it's kind of deflating when that happens, especially when it seems like, well, you just ran up the ball into 11 defenders. They'll be doing a lot of work on that on the practice field. I don't know how much they'll break out in the games because, again, you don't want to put it on tape.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. We talk about in camp, it feels like by this point we've talked about everything, right? That we've talked about all the position groups, all the people, usually multiple times. So I know you and I were trying to think of who's someone maybe we haven't talked a lot about, but that deserves to be talked about.
Yeah.
And you came up with the name Anthony Nelson.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear why that was something that came to your mind and maybe why we haven't talked about him enough.
I think the reason that we don't talk about Anthony Nelson a lot is that he's not particularly flashy in anything he does on the field, but we've seen each of the last 2 seasons when he's gotten an increased snap load down the stretch, he's been a very productive player, getting sacks and forced fumbles, had some really big key plays that helped us win the games we needed to win at the end of last season to get the division title. And Coach always talks about him, and did again yesterday, saying he kind of does everything. He may not be the absolute fastest guy out there, or doesn't look like Vita Vea, the most powerful guy out there, but he kind of does everything right, and he's always in the right place. He's very reliable, and so Coach says they kind of think of him as sort of like 1A, 1B as a starter. The starters, it looks like, according to the depth chart, are Shaq Barrett and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, but Anthony Nelson is kind of right there as almost a co-starter with the rest of them. And actually, they may say he's not flashy, but I was watching one-on-ones between the OL and DL in practice yesterday inside the indoor facility there, and he got the very first snap and pulled off just a really beautiful spin move. I'm not going to name the guy that beat him because I don't want to do that, but it was a great spin move by Anthony Nelson that got him inside and straight to the quarterback. So he might have a few flashy moves in his repertoire.
I like it. And then, of course, preseason, the biggest goal is always to be as healthy as possible by the end of it, right? That's always your big thing is, injuries are sort of inevitable in this game, but you want to see how much you can go unscathed in that. So after one preseason game, where do we kind of stand on the injury front? Who seemed maybe a little banged up after the game, and just as a whole, where's our health?
So it was noticeable that there were 3 of the Bucs' 8 draft picks who weren't practicing when the team went back to work yesterday. Those were linebackers Servassier Dennis and outside linebackers, pass rushers Jose Ramirez and Yaya Diaby. And Coach said afterwards it's nothing serious. A couple of them played a lot in that game and are just still a little sore. I can't give an official report if they're back to work today, but I'm pretty sure I saw at least Jose and Servassier still sitting out. I don't think there's anything serious about that, but they just, if you give them these 2 days rest and then the travel day, maybe they'll be ready to go by the time those important joint practices happen. But then at the very end of practice yesterday, starting running back Rachaad White pulled up a little bit. Him and some trainers seemed to be looking at something on his lower leg, maybe his ankle or something, or a foot. But Coach Bull said afterwards that it wasn't really serious. It just may have just frightened him a little bit. You turn an ankle for a second, you think, oh, did I just get a bad injury? But it wasn't that bad. It appears to not be an issue. As for Ryan Jensen, once again, no updates yet. He was not practicing yesterday. I didn't get a look at the warm-up line today to see if he's prepared to practice today. He's sort of been on a bit of a one-on, one-off kind of schedule.
Yeah, and yesterday wouldn't have surprised me being on turf.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Same thing as Levante didn't practice yesterday. And if you're going to give him a day off, let's give him the day off when they're on turf. So, but as for an update as to when he's going to be back doing like full team drills and playing in games, we don't have one yet.
Okay. Let's go ahead and look a little bit at these joint practices coming up here. And, some of the interesting matchups, it's always nice to, again, get to see some guys going against someone other than their teammates. Because for one thing, your teammates really well. You know their tendencies. You know all these things. So I bet things maybe don't work quite as well against your teammates as they might against somebody else. So I think that it can be a really good judge of how people are doing. So what are some of the matchups that stand out to you that you're excited to see on this Jets versus Bucs practice?
Well, one of the great things about this is when you're going into a preseason game, and I think before the preseason game on Friday night when we were doing our pregame show, I talked about, Mike Evans and Shaq Barrett because they're doing great here in camp, and then the game starts and neither of them are playing. As for joint practices, those guys will practice unless they're banged up, and those two specific examples are not. So you will get to see Mike Evans against Sauce Gardner. That's like maybe the number one I want to see.
Yeah,
and
very excited.
Mike's been doing just so well in this camp against some pretty good cornerbacks, but there are people out there who, I know Sauce Gardner was the defensive rookie of the year. You're hearing plenty of talk already that he might be the best cornerback in the entire NFL right now. So, if Mike can continue to produce against that sort of coverage, that'll be really interesting to see.
And we know Mike is just a wee bit competitive. And I think going against when he hears top corner in the league potentially, and the Hard Knocks cameras are on, I have a feeling there might be some motivation there, which is always fun.
Hopefully
and then now I've enjoyed, when we talked about watching Hard Knocks, that they kind of have that of a good battle in their practices because of Garrett Wilson.
Who was the offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, and so I feel like that's going to be a matchup you'll enjoy as well.
Garrett Wilson against Carlton Davis probably, or Jamel Dean, wherever he lines up. Even if he goes in the slot, then you'll see how the rookie Christian Isian can go up against a very, very talented receiver. So, so there you go, both sides, a corner against a receiver, and in both cases you've got top-notch guys on each side. So that'll be good to see.
How about on the lines? Because this is, again, where a lot of practices, it's really hard to tell a whole lot about the big guys in terms of, they're not always practicing full go or in pads, and it's a little hard to tell. But joint practices are when I feel like you really start seeing some of those, the one-on-ones or even in the teamwork, that those guys in the trenches start getting a
they
little,
get fired
little
up.
feisty.
Yeah, they can get feisty. That's sometimes where scuffles break out, which we don't want to see, but it has happened.
We want to see it. We just
kind of want to see
don't want to see it.
Just
we're being honest.
No swinging, no punches.
We promise not to enjoy it too much.
Well, one of them that will be really good to see will be their very good defensive tackle, Quinnen Williams, going against guys like Matt Filer and Robert Hainsey. I looked at Quinnen Williams' heat map as to where he lined up last season during the regular season, and it seemed to be a little bit more to the side where those guys would be blocking. So that'll be a good test for us because we feel good about getting Matt Filer, one of the few free agent veterans that we picked up in the offseason, and he stepped right into that left guard spot and has gotten good reviews. But this will be good to see him go up against us. I mean, he already is out here against like Vita Vea, but like you said, more competitive against a really good player from another team.
And then, I don't know if people have heard, the Jets have this guy, I forget what's his, yes, Aaron Rodgers, that one, that has had no attention, no media discussion whatsoever in months.
Yeah.
So tell me what you feel like going against a guy like him in joint practices is going to do for our defense.
Well, it's kind of like the last few years here. And Aaron Rodgers, obviously, his move from Green Bay after all those years and a whole lot of success to a new team that feels like it's got a good base of talent and hopes that he's the one that can put him over the top.
Everybody, we heard that story.
Yeah, obviously everybody has compared that to the Tom Brady, the last chapter of his career down here in Tampa Bay, which went so well for both him and the team. And you watched Hard Knocks, you were saying it, everybody up there has already fallen in love with Aaron. They obviously see him as a guy that can put their offense over the top because they got some good results last year with, frankly, some pretty terrible quarterback play, which they've acknowledged. I'm not saying something everybody doesn't already know. So they think the big leap from that level of play to Aaron Rodgers could really take this offense to another level. So the big matchup I want to see is Aaron Rodgers against pretty much our entire secondary and really test them, I mean, I think our quarterbacks have been doing a nice job out here, but Aaron Rodgers is a pretty special passer who can just put the ball on a dime. I'm sure some of it was edited, but did you see those parts in Hard Knocks, the first episode, where they were throwing into the nets?
That was crazy.
He's just making all of them. I would imagine they probably edited a little bit, but still.
That was a lot.
He's dropping it in a bucket from pretty far away.
Yeah.
And so this is a guy that
no-look passes.
I know. They were making a big deal out of that. So lots of good tests for pretty much every member of our secondary, I think.
Yeah, and then, a guy that we haven't talked a ton about this preseason that I think is interesting to watch is Payne Durham, that it's a young tight end room that has a lot of room for, usage, as you've talked about the fact that we expect Dave Canales to use a lot of 12 personnel and use the tight ends a whole lot. We saw Payne, make some plays in that preseason game, get a touchdown. So what do you see as his potential and what he could mean and what you're looking forward to seeing in these joint practices?
Yeah, and we're again, I think we've talked about this before. We do expect to see more 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends, because that's what Dave Canales had experience with in Seattle, and I did talk to him in an interview, and he said, yeah, that is something you can expect to see. And I expect that we will see a lot of him combined with Cade Otton. And when you talk about joint practices, you're going to have a lot of ones-on-ones and, first team, our first team against their first team. And then so Payne right now would be probably on the second team offense when he's not doing 12 personnel. And this linebacker, Chaz Surratt, for the Jets, I got this from Hard Knocks. Again, he's not a starter for them either, so he'd probably be on the second team. So that's why I thought these two going against each other, I mean, their coach, Robert Salah, was just raving about this linebacker on that Hard Knocks thing. So it'd be good to see two young guys on the second team and see what they can do against each other.
And then finally, the Bucs offensive line. We know that we didn't get to see the full starting offensive line in that last preseason game, and I don't know if we know at all what we'll see in terms of this next preseason game, especially as, again, you continue to evaluate Kyle Trask, Baker Mayfield. What is that line going to look like that they're playing behind? What are some of the just big points that you're looking forward to seeing from either the joint practices, if maybe you're not going to see all the starters in the game, or what you hope to see in the game based on what we have seen so far, the areas that you feel like this team's going to really be focusing on with this offensive line?
Well, the Jets draft used the 15th overall pick in the draft on edge rusher Will McDonald, and so that's a guy I'd keep my eye on, especially if he's going up against Luke Gedeke, because, again, we're counting on Luke to take over that right tackle spot, and he has a lot of experience from college at that position and feels comfortable there, but he's still, relatively inexperienced and somewhat of an unknown at the NFL level at that right tackle spot. So assuming if you use a 15th overall pick on an edge rusher, they probably expect him to be pretty darn good. So to see those two going up against each other would be a nice test for that end of the line.
All right, well, that is going to do it for us on Training Camp Report presented by Ticketmaster. Again, this is our final day of training camp here at Advent Health Training Center that is open to fans. So this is our final show we'll be doing from here. We will bring you a training camp report from New Jersey. It's going to obviously look a little bit different than this, but this is the end of Training Camp Report presented by Ticketmaster here. We thank you so much for tuning in with us each and every day we were out here, and go Bucs.